At the end of the day, I think people spend too much time in meetings. He said 90% of his meetings could have been a voice note. A lot of people say, oh, I don't want to do voice, but the reality is they do. Communication is 90 something percent how we say it, not the actual words. The video connection that we think we get doesn't actually translate the way we think it does. If you're just replacing text with voice, I think that's the wrong use case. Partly why people dislike voice is sometimes they're in a situation they can't consume it. A lot of people just wanted to bullet it out. And so we enable you to press a button and now you just have a bulleted summary of what was said, and then use AI to augment and help them have the right information at the right time. Let's lean into what we do well, which is be human connectors.
All right. Yet another episode of C2C Central, Coach to Coach Central, where we have raw and honest conversation. Again, often with coaches, but sometimes, I invite folks who do great things. And, today's one of those cases that coaches could use tools, frameworks, and other stuff. So first I want to welcome Travis to the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Right. And Travis is the CEO and founder of the app that is called CarbonVoice, correct?
Yes, that's right.
And
Kind of like
that's what
carbon copy, copying what you said in there. And for those that are audio geeks, what we all know is the microphone was enabled by carbon paper. And so that's kind of where the name comes from.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay. Super cool. So that's what we want to discuss today. Async coaching, which I'm a huge fan of, I think is one of the tools in your toolbox. And CarbonVoice specifically, and how it can be a really cool tool to help you with async coaching. So let's start with the beginning, I guess, kind of a bit of an origin story, history. How did you end up creating this app?
Yeah, great question. So I actually built something very similar to this in 2010, so quite a while ago. And at that time, the world was still very excited about text. That was kind of the early stage of WhatsApp, and all the IP messages were starting to come out. And it was really still about the growth of text messaging in the experience. And kind of even further origin for me, I was part of the founding team of AOL Instant Messenger. So way back in the day, was very excited about messaging and how people would communicate. Kind of fast forward to 2017, I had a team. There was about 300 people distributed around the globe. And that meant, and they were across 14 time zones. And we kind of hit this point where it was like, we have no more time in the day. We can't keep commenting on a Google Doc. We're talking past each other. We need to talk through this, but we have no time. Getting everyone aligned. I had a team in UK and Israel and South Korea and San Francisco and New York. Like getting all those time zones to align is virtually impossible. And so time was getting lost. We would just, that schedule would happen in a week, things like that. And so I went back and looked at a lot of the tools that were there, WhatsApp, lots of different voice messaging apps. Yep, Slack. And what I found was they were not really designed for voice. They were really mostly text message experiences designed for people sitting in front of the computer all day, but they didn't really feel like a phone call that could just be time delayed. And that's what I was really looking for, was that feeling and that dynamic of we can just talk, and a little bit of time will exist between when I say something and when you say something, or maybe no time exists. And some of the solutions are more consumer, where we saw people were doing this a little bit more, and like WhatsApp was a little bit more of a consumer app, didn't solve a lot of the business oriented problems that also existed. And so that was kind of the birth of, let's go after this problem again. Because at the end of the day, I think people spend too much time in meetings. Stephen Bartlett actually posted the other day that 90%, he looked at his last year of interactions and stuff. He found that, and he said 90% of his meetings could have been a voice note. And, that was kind of a validating
Nice.
alignment of what we saw. And that's exactly what we see every day as people start to use what we've created.
Right. So before we jump into, some of the cool functions that I think Carbon Voice has, I want to address the elephant in the room. Kind of
Yeah.
the biggest pinpoint, I guess. Like, a lot of people have aversion to voice messages, and you know in certain degrees, some people
Yep.
just absolutely hate them and would not even respond to you, like, not in a business sense, right? Like, in
Yep.
the personal interactions, some people politely ask you not to, and they say, oh, I need to put my headphones on, or this and that. So first, is it something real or maybe not? And secondly, what do you have to say to this?
Absolutely. So it's a great question, something that we've confronted a lot, and I would say it's both. It is very real, and there's some very real limitations of voice that we have addressed, and we can talk about how we've addressed some of those things. But voice has power, but it also has restriction, and I think that's where frustration comes in. The second thing is that a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want to do voice," but the reality is they do, and it's often pitting voice against text rather than voice against voice. And so the real opportunity is not how do we take a bunch of text messages we were sending and do them in voice. The real savings is let's take what would have been a meeting, what would have been a phone call, which is going to be voice in the first place, and it is going to be very time consuming, and that's the moment that you ask the question of, could this be a voice message instead? Because the answer is usually yes. And the answer is usually that it's going to get the conversation happening faster, and it's going to avoid a lot of time in a meeting. So I think the right comparison of what you're saving against, if you're just replacing text with voice, I think that's the wrong use case. And that's going to lead to frustration, because if text was going to solve it, then let's use that. That's a great tool for that job. And then we can talk a little bit about how we've made voice better to solve some of those other concerns.
One thing I noticed, even us sending voices to each other, I say like a lot. And it just, especially when you see and you do have the transcript, which I
Yep.
think is brilliant. It's probably one of the tools that you're gonna mention. I think this is brilliant. But when you look at this and it says you're like, oh my God, it seems like I sound awful. Like, this is my biggest frustration with the text, especially if we now get into coaching. When I text my client, and I do a lot of async coaching, I have time to choose the word, or maybe to
Yep.
write and then change it. When I'm speaking, what I end up doing, and that's my frustration, I record, and then somewhere in the middle, I think, oh, I should have worded differently. So I delete it and re-record it and re-record it. So sometimes 2, 3 times. And that's a bit of a waste of time. I don't know. That's
Yep.
maybe the practice. That's maybe the practice and the habit of learning to say less, which would be beneficial for any public speaker. But secondly, yeah, learning how to pause and maybe say what you think slower.
Yep.
I don't know. What would
Yeah.
you say to that?
I I would say that that is obviously, if people are saying, have verbal static, of ums and ahs and things like that, of which I'm guilty of. Uh, that is happening in the other forms where you use voice. So again, it is the situation that voice. We have these patterns of how we communicate. I would also say that's partly what makes us human. If you have ever, I've been deposed before, sitting there talking, everyone in the room understands what we're talking about, and I get the transcript back, and I was like, what? None of this made sense. And it's because the reality is communication is 90 something percent how we say it, not the actual words. And so when you think about the world of distilling down to the simple words, it's really great if you're writing a novel, if you're trying to be very transactional, because that is, very binary, very to the point, and it's good to capture and wrap it up. But truthfully, I think that's where that's essentially becoming really like a computer, and humans are not about the perfection of every communication. It's actually about the imperfection. If you're thinking about coaching, it's not about having the perfect answer. It's about having the empathy and the connection and the nuance of what we're trying to say. And that can very easily get lost in text because so much is not there. And so one of the things you pointed out is we do automatic transcriptions. Part of the way we solve some of these problems with voice is partly why people dislike voice is sometimes they're in a situation they can't consume it, right? So they're in a meeting, they're in a movie theater, they're watching TV with their family next to them, or my wife is often asleep in bed and I'm still doing stuff on my phone. And in those moments, it's not going to be okay to play that out. And so, the way we solve that is an automatic transcript that just happens. You don't press a button; it's just automatically there. There's AI summaries and bullet summaries, things like that, to make it really easy to consume. And one of the byproducts, which has been an interesting thing, is the early stage of the transcript we didn't have the verbal static. The speech to
Oh.
text engine we were doing didn't capture that. The one that we're using right now does do that, and it is more accurate to the literal things that are being said. And so there's an accuracy improvement, but it's also come with this side effect of the verbal static. And we have some people who love that and some people who don't. And the reason some people love it is when you go to read the actual transcript, if I speak in mid sentence, I change direction. If you don't have that verbal static, it's hard to tell that that's what happened. And so the transcript can be misleading of what the intent was. And so the verbal static being captured sort of helps you understand. It almost helps you replay what the person said in your head, even just by reading it.
Right, right. Okay, interesting. But I'm sure tools like, for example, Riverside, we're recording it on Riverside, it gives you a transcript and you can ask
Yep,
to remove
absolutely.
those things. So I'm sure you could potentially do that, but what you just described, yeah, it makes
Yep.
sense. I think it's great, especially again, if you're doing some coaching/consulting and it's just voice. Well, sometimes there are action points or there are not links, but there are some actionable steps. There are things that you want easily kind of copy paste or kind of use, and having transcript, I think, solve that issue of
Yes.
just having the voice.
100%. So, and this is what we found a little bit with some of the consumer tools, is in consumer discussion, our conversation just moves forward and it's sort of ephemeral. It doesn't matter. It's
Right.
chatter. In business, if I am talking to you and give you 8 things you need to go do, those are all important, right? And so it's not okay that they just sort of get lost. And what we heard from a lot of people was they loved listening to the message because that's how you get the intent. It's also, you can do that. You can go on a morning walk and listen and all this stuff, or be in the car or whatever. But then you need to follow up. And so with that follow up, that's where you want to be able to quickly scan. And we did a few things around this. One is the automatic transcript, so you can quickly scan. You can also just press and hold the button to copy the text out. So a lot of people will take that and put it somewhere else. Maybe I brain dumped a whole bunch of content ideas for you, and now it's like that goes into the Google Doc. And then we also found that a lot of people just wanted to bullet it out. And so we enable you to press a button, and now you just have a bulleted summary of what was said. And then there's a bunch of AI actions you can do of really turning it into structured distillation of like, these are the action items, these are the takeaways, that type of stuff. So all of that is the practical reality of when we have a conversation. There's a bunch of stuff I need to know, and then there's a bunch of stuff I need to go do, and then there's the supporting conversation. And so voice is great for that discussion, text is great for the distillation and capture after the fact.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. I think this is the biggest, like you said, this is the biggest kind of um why you cannot use really all the WhatsApps and whatnot, all the messengers, because it's just not there, and it make it
Yep.
really hard to action upon them. All right, so with coaches, and I know like you worked with Ari and a couple of other, maybe more, I don't know, coaches who already use this. What are some other functions that you guys have they love? And what is something they would love to have? And maybe you're planning for this.
Yeah, great question. So, um, the things that I hear people love is a lot of what we just talked about: the automatic transcription, and then some of the bullets for follow up. So, one of the coaches on the platform, Phil Drinkwater, he talks about he's focused on ADHD clients, and
Right.
he points out that a lot of times the getting the takeaway is kind of hard for them to kind of have the follow up, and so he uses it where they can be talking back and forth, and then they can. He suggests they use the get the action items, and then it has that list right there.
Right.
So that's a really practical tool for that client to take the follow up and know what they need to go do. That leads in very much to what we're about to release here soon. We kind of see every conversation really distills down to two things: what do I need to know, and what do I need to go do? And so what we need to go do, the way people are achieving it is the way I just said, they just sort of grab it and then they have that list. What we're now doing is we've built in a to-do list tracker.
Mm,
So a really simple set of to-do list items that is shared in that conversation across the system. It can be assigned in whatever. So that really allows real accountability and follow-up in a structured way. And we'll allow that through Zapier and other things. If you already have another task management system, you can sort of feed in. But the real power of what we're getting to here is you and I just talk, and then out of that comes a set of action items because we just said, oh,
yeah.
next go do this, next go do this. And then now it can be tracked in a very structured way. So that's something that we've been hearing. And actually, I was just right before I jumped on here, was messaging back and forth with a coach who just downloaded the app yesterday. And she was asking the same thing. She wants to assign clients follow-up
Right.
actions. And so that's one. The other is we have this today. We have the ability to take notes on messages, but they're not as well surfaced. And that's another thing that we've heard from coaches is they really love, they often want to keep, sort of this notes of what, their takeaways, and which is just for them to
Right.
kind of
The
understand the
internal, kind of the
relationship.
internal
Exactly.
note. Yeah, I think it's very useful. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. And so we have that on the message object today. Like if you open the message, you can write a note in there.
Mm,
We're going to be doing some work to surface that a little bit. So it's a little bit more accessible for the coach to kind of see
nice.
as they go. And then the third thing is something we've already done is a lot of coaches have ongoing ChatGPT conversations around each client where
Yeah.
they
Yeah, I just
feed
read
information.
Ari's email, not email, post on LinkedIn on that, which I'm still not kind of 100% sure the confidentiality need to be really carefully taken into account. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean there's a bunch of tools that protect that, and you should use team plans and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I
That's
think
important.
it's an interesting tool because I think this is where AI becomes interesting. Is you can sort of have this back and forth, and even at the simplest level of summarizing and zooming out. And so what we've built is a way for you to plug in. Your AI agent like Claude, and soon ChatGPT. ChatGPT's just in the process of rolling out these capabilities where you can go into Claude right now, connect it to CarbonVoice, and say, take that conversation with Lidia and structure it into the follow up, or extract the
Right.
key themes of discussion that we're working on together.
Mm.
And so those are some things that are really helpful to kind of fit into the workflow that people already have.
Yeah. I've heard one of the coaches use Note LMS Note. What's the
Oh,
name?
Google's
Yeah.
notebook. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, notebook. His is really cool. He's doing that. It's just he's extracting stuff from like transcript from the call, uploaded into
Yep.
Note LMS. What's the name? And then does exactly that. Structure, summarize, and stuff like that. Absolutely. I think we coaches. It's kind of it's not always stupid. I think we're robbing our clients if we're not using this. I mean, our brain is not designed for this function. So we can definitely outsource those, and then we can use our brain to ideate, to communicate, to not to not to use it for this things that can be outsourced and done much quicker.
That's also why I'm a big believer in asynchronous voice. Is I think if you look forward over time, there is high risk that binary information is going to be provided by AI. And I think if the value a coach offers is the ability to surface binary textbooks information, that value goes down every day. What I think is going to be harder to replace, and maybe we'll be able to, we can see some technology that will enable it to be true. But I think what people still seek out is human connection. And voice is super powerful for it. And so I am a strong believer that people should be leaning into what they can do well, which is converse and talk and build relationships, and then use AI to augment and help them have the right information at the right time. And that not to be a stand-in for them, but instead to augment them. And the time optimizing our time to be really good text routers. We get email and we send it here and we do this and we're like really good text
Yeah, and
routers.
then and then the research realized that the office workers spend 60% of their time on email.
Yeah. Yes. And we're not going to be as good a router as the AI. So let's lean into what we do well, which is be human
Mm,
connectors.
yeah, no, I absolutely love it. No, I totally agree. I think coaches who are afraid that AI is going to take over their jobs. I think that's exactly the point. Like at least today and a better foreseeable future, um, it will be impossible to if you're using voice and if you're using live calls, it will be impossible to substitute you. But I think like what I found again, I love async and just folks listening. Async communicate or async coaching is where they text you, voice message you whenever they need it, right? And then you reply whenever it's convenient to you. So it doesn't have to happen at the same time, or it could, like you correctly said, it might happen that you just at your phone and you can do that. What I also think is it's nice to have business conversation or coaching conversation separate from your private conversation, so that at least for me, so that when I'm coaching, I'm coaching, I'm still putting my coach hat on or my mentor, my business hat on. Even if we have very close relationship, it's a different sort of relationship. I have separate WhatsApp for business and private. Exactly. Well, first of all, for kind of productivity reasons, to keeping things separate, not check when I don't want to check it, but also because keeping your work separate from again coaching, whether you're texting or voicing to your client. So I sync coaching, you still coaching, and it's a very different type of communication. versus chatting or voicing with your friends.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And I think what you sort of just pointed out is we really didn't put strong definition around what async coaching is, and I think that is um, a few basic concepts I kind of think about is one is if we're on a call or we're on a Zoom meeting together, that is synchronous and that is us talking. But in a normal conversation, one person says something and then the next person that person listens, then the next person talks, right? That should be how a normal conversation goes. And what asynchronous communication does in that is the same, except there's space between that handoff. And what you do with that space is you get to think, you get to reflect, you get to perfect what you want to say, because the expectation that a client says something and that you maintained 100% focus in that period of time that they said that thing, and that you have a insightful, wisdom-filled answer within 500 milliseconds after they're done talking to keep the conversation going is just unreasonable. And so what happens when we have that expectation is we tend to wander a little bit more in what we're saying. So that takes more time. And we maybe, don't deliver the advice that we otherwise would have. And
Yeah.
that's where the real power of asynchronous comes in, is that you can do that over time. The benefit from a coach is you get the ability to, it takes actually less total time. If you actually look at the calendar and the
Yep.
amount of time spent, it also means you can replay if you're like, wait, I don't quite understand what they said. Let's play
Yeah.
that back. You can do that. So there's a lot of advantages, and then you can integrate it into your life in a way that makes sense. So a lot of what Ari and Phil have talked about is they do a lot of this. They sort of catch up on a walk, and
Yeah.
so as a coach or as anyone, like, we're more creative, we're more thoughtful when we're on our feet doing other things than when we're static sitting in front of a display. And so you get some more time to think. And from the client perspective, it frees them up. I've been in a coaching relationship before, and I've got like a 2 o'clock that's between this super important meeting and this I'm not there. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'm running late. I'm anxious to get off for the next thing. And so the ability to just, the moment I have an issue, the moment I'm thinking about something, the moment I have a breakthrough, being able to share that with a coach is super powerful from a client perspective.
Yeah, on that point. So absolutely, benefits both client and a coach. And for client is this ability to share right away, because if you meet in once a week, twice a month, in the next 2 weeks, yeah, you can describe it, but it will
Mhm.
not have the same emotional charge
Yeah.
as when it just happened. And whether it's a win, whether it's a failure, whether it's a difficult conversation or something that you so wanted to do and it finally happened. So sharing this emotional experience raw and right away or pretty close, I think this is so beneficial to a client. And then getting response, again, sometimes, or not sometimes, very often, um something happened and you want to know what to do, like we discussed, right? So one part is sharing, but one part is like, okay, what's next? And the client might like need to do something within the next couple of days, but the session is only next week. So what do
Yep.
they do? Book an extra session? Well, I don't have time. So they not only share the emotions right away, and you as a coach have way closer connection, versus people think I think are less connected, whereas I think it's way more connected. But secondly, you get that, okay, shall I do this or this? Like, what are the questions I should be asking myself to make that decision, right? Or so you can move way faster, achieve results way faster. Now on a coach side, again, as we discussed, Yeah, I love that space that I get between when I read or listen and I reply. Because some of those, I do it a little bit different. I would listen, but then go on a walk to think about
Mhm.
it, right? And then maybe I come back and record it. Everyone has their own way, but I do love this space between when I receive that request or voice note or text note and when I reply the best way. So totally,
Yep.
totally beneficial.
Yep. Absolutely. Totally agree.
Yeah. And again, it doesn't have to be one or the other. I know Ari always say, this is the only way he does coaching. I mean, he's popular, he's famous, he's in demand. He can, first of all, he can afford this. Secondly, it's just how it fits his whole schedule, right? This is how he
Yep.
designed his life. And also it fits his, I guess, maybe he's used to it, or it fits the way he operates as a human being. Like, I'm very visual, and for me it's important to meet my clients. So some of my clients, we have once a month call, right? Or we just have the intro call. I just need this body connection with people, and
Yep.
then we can do a sync. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be a combination, and coaches can find the combination that works for them and for the clients, because their clients also might need this one-on-one time once in a while.
Yep. Yeah, and I think Ari talks about this a bit. He actually does all of the above. I think the a lot of his point is we often bias to the meeting, and that is mostly not needed. And so I think the real shift is like, what do you actually need? What do you need to get? And really break down some of those preconceived notions of what you're going to get out of it. I think if for those that are old enough to remember the time when we had the phone and only the phone, there were deep
The ones like
connections.
this, the ones like
Yes,
this.
it was
I remember.
attached to a wall. There's deep connection that came through those conversations, and
Mhm. Yeah.
there's something very human about it. I wrote a blog post not too long ago where I linked to a bunch of research. There's been a bunch of research that says the video connection that we think we get doesn't actually translate the way we think it does. Um, I I'm still trying to wrap my head around a lot of that research because at one level I get why that research will say what it does, because there's a bunch of how we look at each other's face. So if I'm looking at you in the eyes, I look here, but this is me looking at you in the camera, which doesn't for you feels like I'm looking at you in the eyes. So there's a bunch of stuff about what human connection is that is broken in digital camera things. That said, I also do see there's some value when we're like putting a face to the name and sort of being it. And so for me, a lot of it is how do you piece all these together? Um, and I'm a strong, strong, strong believer that when it actually just gets down to voice, so much of the information is there. You can hear it. You can hear your subconsciously. You can hear when people are sitting versus standing, when they're smiling versus not. Like it all comes through in the voice, and we're very good at picking that up as humans over thousands of years.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of this comes just our perception versus the reality. So I agree with that. And actually, when I was getting my coaching certification back in 2017, we were taught to actually often switch off cameras and
Hmm.
only use voice. One of the reasons that when a client doesn't see us, they're way more connected to themselves, and that's what the coaching is about. The,
Hmm.
the best coaching is when it's not the coach they talking to, it's they talking to themselves. And actually, in the real coaching scenario, if we're in the room, you don't we were taught not to sit one opposite each other, but actually next to each other, so that in the
Mhm.
reflective exercises, a client, can wonder, like, doesn't have your face, because it can lead to a client asking for confirmation or looking for confirmation and telling and being more focused on the coach versus, again, being connected to yourself. So again, we were taught to switch off, like you can switch on
Yeah,
the camera in the beginning of the call, kind of get this rapport and stuff, but once you get into reflective stage, we were taught to switch off the camera. So you're totally
that's
right.
that's great. Yeah.
We're totally right. And we were taught the 3 levels of listening, exactly to listen, not just to the words, not just to the tone. It, there is a tone, which is second level listening, and then there is a third level listening, which is a global listening, where exactly you try to see what is it, the tension, like it's even beyond the tone. So the masterful coaches, I'm sure they'll highly appreciate your point.
Yep. And the thing that is also interesting about that is how to shift on the client side that too, and that this is what we've tried to do with being more mobile centric. Is I think one of the downsides that I feel when I'm in a group team and I say we shut off the cameras is we're still looking at these black squares, and so we're still fixed on the computer, which is static, and that has a very different psychological way the brain sort of opens up versus if I'm walking around seeing trees around or just seeing different things around. And so again, back to the way we used to talk on the phone, we might have been static, but we're sort of wandering, or we'd be up walking around in the room. And there's some Stanford research that says that we're just more creative. We access different parts of our brain when we're up walking around. And unfortunately, camera on or not, when there's a box and you're looking and tethered to your computer, you're just more static. And I think that's another opportunity for people is to not be static, to be out, moving and doing stuff.
Yeah, again, we're conditioned to do things certain way, and it's hard not to. So it's easier if you switch to different device. So it's kind of
Yep.
make, it just honestly, you don't need no effort basically, right? With the camera off, you will need to make a conscious effort not to do so. So it's just
Yep.
easier. Okay, perfect. Well, maybe let's finish with kind of, I know there are some premium features, right, in the Carbon Voice. Tell us one cool feature that we can use, and we kind of wrap up with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So CarbonVoice is free to try. We, make the basic messaging and stuff free and accessible. Where we put, premium features is a lot around the AI stuff, and so a lot of the stuff that will take a lot of information and sort of distill it down. So one is you can just press a button and get bulleted summaries. People who want to start doing real strong organization systems, we have some built-in labels, but then when you want to add your own labels to sort of categorize and have follow-ups in different ways. We have the to-do list stuff coming that I was talking about, where we'll have some of that will just be there, but then the ability to just start using AI and just automatically extract it out of the conversations. Those kind of fit into the premium. And then also the ability to, in team setups, we have ways to create a workspace thing where everyone can be in there, and then retention policies and how information is controlled and shared is kind of part of that premium side. We do have some coaches who use it that way. They actually put all their clients into the paid workspace while they have it, and they just bundle it into their fee. And they do that because they want the client to get all of the AI stuff and the ability to ask questions and stuff like that. And then if the engagement ends, then they remove them from the workspace and lose the features. So that's kind of some of what we do. But at the end of the day, almost everything that you sort of ends up being on the premium side ends up being stuff that's really about how do we make voice super easy to use and get converted and packaged and stored. So a mental model for a lot of what we've done is if CarbonVoice at one level is the asynchronous phone call. So we're having a meeting here, and instead of it being synchronous, it's asynchronous. That's one part. And then people have meeting note takers that are sort of trying to capture everything. That's all built into what CarbonVoice does. It just automatically comes out of the conversations that are happening.
Yeah. No, nice. Super cool. Super cool. And I know some of the coaches also have some sort of a channel or mini podcast kind of the
Yes.
which is super super easy and also have all this cool benefits. So again, I believe that podcasting is one of the best way for coaches to connect with their clients. So, if you're looking for, I think the easy way to kind of start before you want to buy all the gear, all the things. A lot of coaches kind of sitting there, waiting to start one. Like this is the simplest way you can do this short audio notes, voice notes, kind of short mini podcasts. And that could be a great tool to connect with your existing and potential clients.
Absolutely. Yeah, we allow you to create a conversation that people can join. You can share the link out there, anyone can join it. And then it's a listen only conversation,
Right.
or you can actually you can say who can speak. So you can actually have multiple speakers if you wanted to. And the analogy you just said is like a mini podcast or micro podcast. So instead of 30 minutes of content, you might have a 2-minute thought that you just want to share out there. And what Ari talks about is he uses that as a mechanism to broadcast to a bunch of his clients the same information they as a theme they're hearing across. But then what we do is we allow you to reply. So all of a sudden that often becomes a
Personally.
conversation start. Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
And so, he might say something to the group and then individuals start replying back to him. And that's almost like a check in a way. And so it sparks the discussion with everyone. And then for people who aren't yet clients, he said that some of that has converted into people becoming clients that are like, wait, how do you do that? Let's engage around
There you go.
exploring that. So
Yeah.
it's a good pre-sales tool as well as way to manage ongoing conversation with the existing clients.
Yeah. I think it's brilliant. So, and again, I think for coaches connecting with the clients, especially, I think one of the key, Ari should pay us for mentioning him so many times. um, Ari says specifically, if you going to use voice coaching, then definitely use voice in your sales process. That's what he always did. He said, if you want to work with me, send me a voice message. It was Vox before, right? Well, now it's here. So if people are not ready to use voice coaching, well, then they will not send sales kind of questions. So if you planning to use it, then why not kind of right away prepare your clients what they're signing up for? So I think it's
Yeah,
brilliant.
there's a subtle thing that also happens with that is more than he talks a lot about it in terms of it's a qualifier of people coming in.
Yeah.
But I get a lot of people on LinkedIn reach out and say, hey, can we chat? I want to pitch you my service, whatever. The thing that's interesting is when I get them onto Carbon Voice in that kind of conversation, is we end up with way more conversation than would otherwise happen. So,
Mm,
let's imagine you do a traditional discovery call. You've either won or lost in that discovery call, but maybe that's not how people always buy. Sometimes people think about something a week later, unless it crosses a threshold that they're going to book another call with you. You've lost, that person's moved on. But when you're
yeah.
in with a asynchronous thing like Carbon Voice, in that week when they think of something, they might then just ping the question over right away and say, hey, would you be able to work with me in this way or that? And so you actually get an ongoing conversation with someone rather than a one shot
Right.
close in that one moment.
Oh, I love this. I never thought about it. Okay. Yeah, I love this. And you can add them to your mini podcast so they kind of keep connected
Exactly.
with. Yeah. full circle. Okay.
Yeah.
It's great. I think coaches, guys, again, it's free. All the basic tools are free. Go ahead and try it out. I'm now that I've heard and I have some ideas sparking, definitely gonna see how to eliminate some of the meetings, definitely the discovery calls with the CarbonVoice. Well, Travis, thank you so much. First for the app, and then for coming and speaking to us here.
Absolutely. And the website for anyone curious is getcarbon.app. So getcarbon.app, you can kind of go find and has a link to download there. And then feel free to reach out to me. I'm available at cv.chat/Travis. Happy to answer any questions.
Perfect. The links will be down below in the show notes. And yeah, let's move more
Awesome.
coaches to
Thank
async.
you. Thanks for having me, Lidia.
No, thank you so much. Thank you.